Good evening. The meeting is now called to order. This is the Community Development and Urban Planning Committee meeting for Thursday, June 13th, 2024. I am the Chair, Council Member at Large, Maria D. Cabrera. At this time, I will call the roll for the members of the committee first. Nathan Field,
Present.
Shanae Darby, Brigida Fields,
Present.
Yolanda McCoy, she's actually absent with leave, James Spadola,
Present.
Vincent White, I understand he's on his way, and Ernest Tripicongo. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for those that are able to join us today. We did have several items on the agenda, but they have been held. So at this point, an ordinance to amend Chapter 34 of the City Code to provide for residential rent stabilization, sponsored by Councilwoman Darby. She has requested to take this off the agenda this evening, so we will not be addressing that. Thank you, Councilman White, for joining us today. Councilman Vincent White is present. So we have one item on the agenda this evening, and it's an ordinance to amend Chapter 4 of the City Code relating to the registration of vacant properties, and that is sponsored by myself as the chair of the committee. So what this ordinance hopes to achieve is that the registration of vacant properties has not been updated in quite a while, and we see that with the current rate system that we have, that it's about the average 8 to 10 years before a vacant property, when an owner of a vacant property actually feels the pain of the fees, and then they decide to do something about it, or sometimes it just goes to sheriff's sales. What happens is folks do pay the current fees. You have a year to register a vacant property, or for it to be allowed to be vacant before any fees begin to be acquired. Starts at $500 and it keeps going up, and it's a while before it gets up there. So currently it's $500 for at least 1 year. If it's been vacant 1 year, less than 2 years, $1,000 for properties that are vacant for at least 2 years but less than 3 years, $2,000 for properties that are vacant for at least 3 years but less than 4 years, $3,500 for properties that are vacant for at least 4 years but less than 5 years, and $5,000 for properties that are vacant for at least 10 years. So now these fees will change, where the $1,000 will go to $2,500, the $2,000 will go to $5,000, the $3,500 will go to $10,000, and the $5,000 will go to $12,000. Hopefully this incentivizes those that want to hold on to these vacant properties in our neighborhoods. I will speak to the vacant properties, and I will allow my council members to also speak. As Councilmember Fields, who's here with me, I know this is something that's very prevalent in her district. Having lived in a district that had a lot of vacant properties, I saw the difference versus living in a district that did not, the first compared to the fourth and the fifth. And one of the things that I did when I first was elected as a city councilwoman, on that very first shooting of the year, January 15th or 17th, happened around 28th in Washington, I drove to the site. I wanted to see what it looked like. And then I started doing that with pretty much every shooting that took place in those 4 years that I was in office. I went to the location and I did my own audit. I don't have numbers. I can't give you exact figures to the T, but I will tell you that what I deducted is that about 95% of the shootings, there was a vacant property within 100 to 300 feet. 90% of the shootings, give or take, there was the problem liquor store, and about 80 to 85% the problem corner store. So when we talk about what are we going to do about crime in the city of Wilmington, I firmly believe, and my focus through this term has been on neighborhood stabilization. We see the evidence that every neighborhood that has been stabilized, the crime has dropped down, the shootings of crime have dropped down. When there are eyes and ears and there's people living in those homes, you don't have people either squatting, hanging out in front of the stoop. They see that there's no eyes, there's usually darkness, so folks will engage in bad behavior. And the neighbors that do live in those blocks, not only do their property values go down, they have to suffer the ramification. And I have yet to come across one neighbor anywhere in this city that has said to me, we welcome keeping vacant properties on our block. If anything, they hold us accountable for making sure that we do something with these vacant properties, and how come the city's not doing enough? They don't understand that the fees that currently exist, that we can't just go and take somebody's property. It belongs to them. It's your property. But you are responsible for doing something with it, and it's not fair to the neighbors. You know, whether it's a leaky roof, damage to the property that is now damaging the neighbor's property, the grass, the break-ins, all the things that ensues. And the city has to sometimes, we have to secure those vacant properties, which is a cost to us, which is a cost to the tax dollars. And even though we try to get some of this money from the people who own these properties, sometimes we do, sometimes we don't recuperate them, and eventually they will go to sheriff's sale. Now, there are situations which may be brought up, such as tangled deeds and things of that nature, and I'm going to have Councilmember White speak to that in some work that he's doing with that. So, in short, I'm giving you my what I feel is a problem and a solution that we have within our control with the little bit of power that we have on city council, because we're not the state, we're not the feds. I can't get into the schools and fix the educational system. I can't get into the homes and try to fix the problems at home, why these kids are picking up guns and shooting each other. You know, I just, that's not within my control. I can do whatever I can to help with those situations, but I know for a fact that when we stabilize neighborhoods, crime goes down. So we are going to make sure that people know that the city of Wilmington is not a place for you to buy a property and hold on to it until you figure the property values go up or something is going to happen before you develop that property. Because we do have a lot of property owners that are from out of town, that are corporate businesses. This isn't grandmom's house. You know, we have a few of those. And if there's issues with the deeds, again, we're looking at ways to rectify that. The legislation gives people more time to register. You have, 6 months before you even have to register, and then the time starts. So you got an extra 6 months, and there's other provisions that have been made to make it a little more user-friendly, and so folks can ask for an extension. There's several extensions that are allowed before you even have to pay a fee. And I do have someone from the law department here, our city solicitor, Robert Goff. I'm going to have you speak before I open it up to my council members so they can give feedback on why this ordinance is so important. So go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. You've already outlined really the key pieces of the legislation that is before you, this committee. I'll go through them a little bit in a slightly more.
Excuse me one second. I do want to acknowledge that Councilmember Letitia Bracy is online. Thank you. Sorry.
Great, that's all right. Essentially, as you've noted, it increases registration fees in order to enforce the policy of the city to have occupied properties. That's the stick aspect of it. But as you mentioned, Madam Chair, it also creates a carrot as well for owners of property by essentially establishing a program allowing delinquent registration fees to be voided if the owner obtains a certificate of occupancy or completion within a year. It lengthens the time, as you've already noted, for triggering the registration requirement from 45 days to 6 months. It provides for 2 one-year extensions to the exemption from registration fees for properties deemed occupancy ready. And that means that they're ready for people to be in them. It clarifies a number of things which are really housekeeping matters. And with regard to an extension of a one-time waiver, it clarifies that the vacant registration fees must be paid if the property is not occupied, sold, or demolished. It removes the requirement of the law department to review the commissioner's decision to grant the waiver, because that is something that probably not necessary. The law department merely gives advice. It doesn't really advise concerning whether or not people have met the particular requirements here. And it also provides that individuals who purchase a vacant building directly from the Wilmington Land Bank are billed a vacant registry fee based on the duration of vacancy from when they received that property from the land bank. And they're not hobbled with all the prior time that the property may have been vacant. So those are the essential items that it does. It provides, as I've noted, both a carrot and a stick in order to promote the policy of property occupation.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to open this up to the members of the committee, so they can speak to the legislation or any personal experiences that they have within their own districts when it comes to vacant properties.
Madam Chair, he wants to speak.
We're going to start with Councilmember Fields. She lives in a district that is very mixed, and there's a lot going on there, and she can speak to some of the successes that we have had with vacant properties being repurposed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to everyone that is attending and that's listening. If you don't know, the 5th District has been plagued with several vacant properties in between homeowners, and it's very concerning to me. We have people that are using these vacant homes to do drugs, live there, camp out there, and they're not being taken care of. So with that being said, you know, I am definitely for this ordinance. It needs to happen. We need to hold these individuals accountable for what them not taking care of these properties. And, you know, for nothing else, if we're trying to stabilize Wilmington, we can't have 2 vacant homes here and then 1 homeowner here and whatever else. The only way that we can build Wilmington back is block by block. And if we can get those vacant properties taken care of, whether they own them or they sell them, then that is something that we need to do. We need to start holding these people accountable, especially those ones that don't live in the city of Wilmington or don't reside here in Wilmington or Delaware, because if you're not here, then you can't really see the development that is going on to rebuild our communities that hasn't had an opportunity to rebuild. It's been years, and it's time for us to move on and start holding these people accountable for not taking care of these properties. And I just want to say one thing, even though we're city council, and I just have to say this again, we have no jurisdiction over health, education, and housing.
Did you want to speak to the success that's been happening in the Lower
Yes.
Hilltop as we secure,
Yes.
working with the land bank? Yeah.
No, we don't. So with that being said, yes, the vacant houses that were up there in the Hilltop, working through the land bank and different minority developers, we have been able to stabilize these houses, renovate those houses, and get some first-time home buyers in these properties. So with that being said, there has been a major change in the Lower Hilltop area. It's called the Hilltop Initiative, and it has been a major change. People that has been living there for 45 years have seen the change, and they implore City Council, Bud Friel, the governor's been through there. We've had WSFS, we've had Christiana Care, who else? Cornerstone, CDC, Westside Grows, they've all came through and seen the progress that's happening by eliminating these vacant properties in our community.
Yeah, our state senators, our state representatives have been through, community members have walked through. So basically, the land bank bought 32 out of the 40 vacant properties that are within a 10-block radius, and we're now going to be expanding the footprint. We've been able to purchase 32 of them. 7 of them have been sold. I believe this week we just sold one last week, so maybe 8 have been sold. 6 are going to be listed in the next month or 2, and 4 are now currently under construction, and they should be available by fall. I was in one of the properties yesterday visiting with the neighbors, so the biggest thing that I've seen driving through that neighborhood at night is that now you don't see the squalors. You don't see people hanging on the corners. You don't see them sitting on the doorsteps. And one of the neighbors, Norman Mercado, what did he say to us? He felt that the city had abandoned that area and that we forgot them. And he was so happy to see that the city was paying attention, that something was being done. And it is partnerships. It's not just the city. We're not into development. But the fact that we were able to partner with nonprofits, private banks, and foundations that have given us money as well, including the federal delegation, have assigned monies for this housing issue in the city of Wilmington. So just with those 14, and back then it was just 7, those properties, I had Captain Rosario, invited him, but unfortunately he was not able to be here. It's been a lot of different things that have happened in that neighborhood, but crime is down 58% in that lower Hilltop area. Of course, some of it had to do with, them locking up a gang and a few other things, but we know that the vacant properties and being able to repurpose those homes has led to that decrease in crime in that neighborhood. Again, proving the theory. If you stabilize neighborhoods, they will eventually get better. And the neighbors have bought in, and they're getting involved in cleanups, and they're now communicating with each other, communicating with us. And there's just a community building and a good spirit that's happening in that one specific area. We can look no further than the east side, where there's been an investment of $22 million to also repurpose the vacant properties. We have partnerships with Woodlawn. They do just rental. We have Habitat for Humanity. They do home ownership, affordable home ownership. So there's a lot of investments that's happening in different partnership. We have Amani Village taking place. There was a lot of vacant properties in that Riverside neighborhood. And even though we're still having issues, crime has come down significantly. I remember when I used to call Bennett Street Little Beirut. I mean, there was a shooting there every other day. Now we have new homes, Ministry of Caring, Habitat for Humanity, as I mentioned, Woodlawn. These are partners, minority contractors. 85% of the contractors who work with the land bank are minority owned. So they are developing. They are the developers that are developing in those neighborhoods. And they're growing their businesses and their companies, and they're hiring people to work. So it's a win-win for everybody when we're able to do this. Councilman White, you had raised your hand.
Yes, Madam Chair, I have some questions. Should I approach you every time I have a question? Continue.
Please speak into the mic, Councilman.
I have several questions. Shall I approach you after each question, or can I ask them?
Oh, you can ask them, and either myself or Mr. Goff can answer them if I'm
Thank you.
not able to.
Okay. So, Mr. Goff, the legislation, proposed legislation speaks to properties purchased directly from the Wilmington Land Bank. Suppose the property is not purchased but given.
Given by the land bank?
Yes.
I would think that if a property is conveyed by the land bank to an individual, then it would, the moratorium on the time frame or the tolling of the time of vacancy would apply.
So whether it's purchased or given, the
Right.
language would apply.
Well, mostly, I mean, any deed as well as any conveyance document is going to cite consideration in order to make it enforceable. So it may be nominal consideration, but it'll still constitute a purchase.
So you'll act on the nominal consideration then, as far as being
Yeah.
that it was. Does the Wilmington Land Bank now pay vacant registration fees?
I don't believe that they do.
Okay. So then the determination from the time of the purchase from the Wilmington Land Bank, if the property was never deemed vacant, would occur when?
Well, the time frame in which the new owner would have the clock start ticking is the time frame when they would have acquired title to the property.
And the reason why I asked, because in the legislation, I thought it goes back to the day that it was vacant under the Wilmington Land Bank before his or her clock would start ticking.
Well, I believe that it would start ticking from, could you point to the specific provision then?
I think it's vacant building fees to housing.
Page, what page? are
I'm
you-
sorry, Counselor, page 4.
Page 4.
So it says, if I read it correct,
Mhm.
thank you, Madam Chair.
I think it's page 5.
Well, it's page 4 on my thing, but I'm.
Okay.
But it's welcome. At the bottom, vacant registration fee to a housing provider, meeting the criteria, blah, 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 who receives a vacant property shall not be based on the duration of the vacancy prior to the not-for-profit receiving it.
Right. So what it's indicated in the section that I'm reading here is that the land bank, the The vacancy registration fee billed to the purchaser of a vacant property directly from the Wilmington Neighborhood Conservancy Land Bank shall not be based on the duration of vacancy prior to purchase, but rather from the time the purchaser received the vacant property from the Wilmington Neighborhood Conservancy Land Bank.
So, per this legislation, Madam Chair, may I continue?
Yes, you may continue.
So, per this legislation, the property could have been in the Wilmington Land Bank's possession for 4 years and vacant, and once it's transferred, that entity or person would have additional,
It zeroes out the time frame.
and so this time frame starts all over again
Correct, from the date of the purchase.
on the
It
date.
is to encourage people to buy those properties and to make certain that that's not an impediment on bringing those properties into occupancy. I believe that's the policy reason behind it.
All right. Regarding notice, the law stipulates that notice, which is always a sticky question, should be put in writing, blah, blah, blah. You guys read better than me. But the question comes down to, is notice going to be provided in any other language than English?
Well, I would imagine that would be a decision, it's not in the code here.
No.
I would be a policy decision of L&I. Perhaps that can be done.
Is that, so,
That's not really a legal question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't send the notices out.
Okay.
That would be L&I.
so according to page 9, if the notice is returned undeliverable, which practical practice, it is quite possible that it would be determined undeliverable, and then the posting of the notice in a conspicuous place, again, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, would be done. My question is that, do you think that's, how, maybe it's not the right question for the right time.
So the provisions that I think you're talking about is this small small Roman numeral 6.
Yes.
Yeah, so those are the provisions that currently exist in the code, and so there's
okay.
no changes being made to those. I haven't really examined those because that wasn't really what the legislation was about, but I'm happy to look into that and get back to you.
Thank you. And can you just explain the commercial portion of this, the 25%? I just want to make certain I understand.
Sure. This is basically in recognition of the fact that commercial properties are also subject to vacant registration rules and fees. And it is designed to, if a property is not being substantially used, in fact, it's being insubstantially used, it's kind of a sham use, a use that's not really occupying much of the property's space, or much, there's no perhaps electricity really going, except for maybe 1 or 2 days. It's just kind of a placeholder that this is designed to capture that loophole with regard to commercial properties, so that if they're only intermittently occupied and not being substantially used, then they will be subject to being declared vacant.
Okay, just 2 more further questions, Madam
proceed.
Chair. Does, if any of these properties deemed vacant for whatever period that the law speaks to, has any other fees, such as water bills or anything that, would that trigger, how would that be addressed? Because all I'm noticing that it's calculated on vacancy.
Well, so that doesn't, the water fees and things like that are really not dealt with in this legislation at all.
So someone could pay or not pay or be encumbered by the fact that there's additional fees. How is that, okay, I guess the due diligence for them would be for them to find that out. Because that would have to be made current. I mean, I may ask you
Sure.
a question.
Sure.
But the law doesn't speak to that.
This one doesn't address really water fees and how they are made current or their impact.
Or property taxes.
on-
This is
or
strictly
property
on
taxes.
vacancy.
Yeah, this
Well,
is,
I understand, thank you. I get, okay, I'll save that. One last question, if I may, Madam Chair. How are the increase in fees, the amounts determined?
well, I think a policy decision was tried, I guess the sense is that the stick wasn't big enough, and also the incentives weren't good enough. So the design was that, the thought was that I would imagine that this stick is going to be more satisfactory to achieving the result, and that these incentives would incentivize folks that were facing the possibility of these vacant fees to bring their properties into compliance and get them occupied and get them fixed up. I think that's the process that was followed.
And Madam Chair, question directly to you. Do you know if the amount of vacancies have increased or decreased in the last 5 years, 4 years?
The amounts have decreased. Now, I did ask for a number. We were given a packet that has a list of the vacant properties. You could see a lot of these are outsiders. Unfortunately, there isn't a total, so I don't have the breakdown. I would have liked to have had a breakdown of how many vacant properties we have, how many were LLCs and investment properties, including businesses versus residential homes, and maybe homes that are owned by private individuals, so we could have shared that information this evening, but unfortunately, we don't have that. I do want to address the question that you had talked about the fees. I'll be quite honest, when we started talking about this 3 years ago, and David Sofrin was here, and we were talking about the proposed fees, they were a lot higher than what they are now. And yes, I think the mayor was uncomfortable raising them to that extent, but I will tell you that I was not. And I would have liked to have seen these the stick be a little bit bigger, but that's okay.
Yeah,
I'm comfortable with this, and we negotiated it, and I said I can live with this. It's, the 2,500 would have been 3,000.
No, Madam Chair, I just asked because I didn't know if it was best practices regionally, we solicited that. But I'm satisfied with the
Well, yeah,
response.
but to answer your question, yes, because some research was done to
Thank
see
you.
what other cities were doing at that time, when Dave Sofrin was working with me on these issues.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Goff.
Mr. White,
You're welcome.
could you address the issue of tangled titles real quick? Because I know you're working on that with the state, because that also comes up, that what happens when someone is trying to either sell a property or do something with the property, or even get a loan to be able to fix the property, but they're caught up in that this was grandmom's house, there was no will. Like, how do we save legacy homes, obviously, because we don't want these homes to be lost if the family wants to keep the home, whether they want to reside in the home or they want to use it as an investment property, rent it out. God knows we need affordable housing in the city, so how are we moving forward with that? Because we don't want to penalize people that want to do something with the property, but we want something done. So could you tell us the work that you're doing with
Well,
that?
I'm only going to say this. The law speaks particularly to the lawful owner. And someone who is experiencing issues regarding title would not be, unless there's some exemptions, would not be would not be subjected to this law because to this proposal, it says the lawful owner. Unless the city wants to make any other exemptions, that person would not be able to move forward. Per your request, and I'm sure Councilor knows, I mean, we talk about individuals who can't change title because of wills not being done or family members not agreeing to the terms, and the property would remain vacant. But there is an appeal process in this that makes me comfortable about that. The uncomfortableness is the notice provision, people who woulda, shoulda, coulda got it. But I think in terms of what we're looking at, unless the city wants to recognize non-owners as a part of this conversation, it would not be applicable to them.
Okay.
So, but the appeal process may be the particular way to go.
Yeah, that was taken into consideration when the legislation was drafted. Number one, to give people more time before they even have to register. Instead of 45 days, they have 6 months. It really just gives time and flexibility. So you figure that within 2 to 3 years, because even if they ask for an extension, it gives them that ability to work through the legal process to get the property in their name if there is a tangled deed or there was no will, as was mentioned, because we know that that happens. And we want to be clear that if there's a legacy home and someone wants to keep that home in their family, that's where they grew up, and maybe no one wants to live there, but they still don't want to get rid of it. Maybe they just want to rent it out or do something with it. All we're saying is that it can't just sit there vacant for 5+ years without anything being done. And believe me, there are vacant properties in our city that people maintain. They keep the electric running. You would never know that they're vacant. I mean, I know of a few, and guess what? I would never even want to go after those people because they're doing their due diligence. That property is not causing a problem. They have everything running, whether someone's physically living there or not, the property's being maintained, you would never know. They just choose not to live in it. So those situations also occur. This is not about that. This is about what we see when we drive past, the unkept properties that just sit there forever and ever and ever. Are there any other questions from our council members that are here present and committee members before I open it to anyone, the council members that are online? Any council members online that would like to comment or give input or ask questions? Anyone online here? Okay, at this point. So at this time, we're going to turn it over to any members of the public that have any questions or comments they would like to make. And then if there's anyone online with Zoom that would also like to speak, please raise your hand and we will call on you after the people who are here in the chambers. Thank you. If you could please state your name and your district and move forward.
Hi, my name's Christian Willauer. I'm a resident of the 5th District. And I'm here, I'm also a volunteer with the Homes Campaign. And I don't think anybody disagrees that vacant properties are not a problem. Like, we all agree vacant properties are a huge problem. And they undermine neighborhoods, and we need to bring them back. And these are issues that I and a bunch of people in community development all over the city have been working on for a long time. But fines, this proposal is not the right solution. It's an important problem, but fines are not the right solution. And basically what we're trying to do is revitalize neighborhoods. That's the goal. The goal is to bring back these vacant properties and make sure that people can live in them again, make sure that the commercial properties are in use, make sure that we have like viable neighborhoods, we have vital commercial districts, and we know what works to promote revitalization. It's investment. That's what we do when we want to get things moving. We do investment. We create programs where there is investment. Like on the east side, $22 million from ARPA funds. It transforms neighborhoods when you have investment. When you put that money into creating affordable home ownership opportunities, when you create affordable rental opportunities, like some of the innovation that's happening with the Wilmington Housing Authority. Downtown, we have incredible programs. It's a revitalization project. We know what it takes to revitalize areas. It takes grants, it takes incentives, it takes tax abatements. We have all of these for downtown. We have incredible resources that go to developers that want to bring back vacant properties downtown. They can get 20% cash back on on construction costs through the downtown development districts. They can get tax abatements for all those properties. Like, this is what you need. You need investment. And I just don't think that we should look at fines for neighborhoods as the solution to bring properties back. Like, we shouldn't say, oh, in downtown we need grants and loans and subsidies, but in the neighborhoods we need fines. Like, it's just not true. We need the same approach to revitalization all over the city. And that approach should be to make sure that the owner, if they have a goal of repairing that property, let's get resources to them. Let's create programs that help bring the vacant properties back. And I just want to say, as far as the vacant properties registration program goes, we've had it for, 15 years. We've had huge fines. Like, if you look, the existing fines are already very high. There are people who own vacant properties that are already paying significant fines. It doesn't work. Like, I've been looking at the vacant property list for like 10 years, 15 years, and we had 1,200 vacant properties 15 years ago. We fined everybody for having vacant properties, and I got the list. We have 1,053 vacant properties today, and that doesn't include properties that are owned by the Land Bank or the City of Wilmington, or I don't think it includes Wilmington Housing Authority properties. Like, it doesn't work. Please do not double down on a failed policy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, Councilwoman Cabrera and other members of the Community Development and Urban Planners Committee for allowing me to give public comment. I came today to talk about the rent stabilization bill because I think that is so great and necessary for the city of Wilmington, and that we can be, the first to do things like provide affordable housing for people. I live in District 5, and first I just want to say that I think my goal is for for me being here is to see existing homes renovated, just so we're clear. No one wants to see properties that are boarded up in our communities. After looking through this legislation, I think it has good intentions, but it fails to adequately address the intended purpose for which it's drafted. Increasing fees on vacant properties may seem like a viable solution to incentivizing property owners to make productive use of their assets, but it's not effectively addressing the underlying issues. We have people who need support fixing up their vacant properties. They need repair programs to keep their homes clean, secure, and watertight. And so I think higher fees have an inadvertently effect on encouraging investment in our community. And I think the intention behind raising these vacant property fees may think it's to tackle urban blight, but it's not. You know, I think it's crucial to consider how the broader implications of and exploring how we can take more holistic approaches to addressing the vacant properties in the city of Wilmington. I think the other person who commented made it really clear, you know, downtown development, they get grants, incentives, abatements, but in the neighborhood, you have people who are scrambling for resources to be able to fix their homes that are, you know, decaying in the city of Wilmington. And so I think, and I encourage the city committee to enforce existing laws, you know, use the income from the vacant property registration program to rehabilitate vacants, enforce existing laws with the increasingly large annual fees that you already collect and fine owners who don't register them. And that income should be used to rehabilitate these vacant properties. So if we have 1,053 vacant properties and the city continues to collect millions of dollars, I don't know how much the exact figure, and that's contributed to the general fund, these resources should be used to keep vacant properties clean and secure. And so L&I, you know, they budgeted less than $200,000 in the last fiscal year to address the conditions of properties neglected by the owners. And so, again, I just encourage you not to raise these fees and fines on the small guys in the neighborhoods, and think about how you can use your existing policies within the city to get homes fixed up.
Thank you.
I don't want him to sit down just yet, because I have a couple questions. And did Ms. Willauer leave permanently? She's not coming back?
I'm not sure where she
Okay,
went.
all right. So what I would like to ask is this, like, what is the solution? How do you incentivize these people to take care of these properties? We put out $1.5 million for that neighborhood lottery program, and that does help some of the current homeowners, which some people might vacate the property because it needs repairs. The city is looking at other avenues, such as evergreen loans, but we do have a repair program. We do have some programs in place to help current homeowners. When I look at this list of vacants, this isn't, you know, the everyday guy who has an issue here. A lot of these are corporate, these are businesses, these are out of town. I'm looking at the zip codes. They buy these properties because they see an opportunity to invest in Wilmington, and they hold on to them until they decide that they're going to do something. So these are the folks that can afford to pay these fines. They're not the ones that are caught up in a tangle deed because it was grandmom's house and things like that. So it has to be balanced out. And in terms of monies that we do collect, at this point, the Land Bank being a nonprofit, they get $1 million from the city of Wilmington, and we leverage other things. We also pay contractors to go out and to board the properties and maintain them, but that doesn't solve the problem that they remain. So you made some suggestions, but do you really believe that this is just everyday folks that are losing their properties that can't afford to pay? Because they're paying the fines, and they do nothing. They can afford to pay the fines. They've been doing it. The properties stay vacant for almost 10 years before it gets to the point that they'll do something about it. So what do you think we should do?
I think the lack of strong, persistent government intervention is the issue. I think, you know, Gibraltar, right? You look at the 8th district and you see a mansion that I would like to know how many fees were collected from their property, right? So you look at that, and we have a tale of two cities. You know, if you're in a wealthy neighborhood and if you're in the Highlands, you know, your property is fine. But if you own a home in the, you know, Hilltop, you know, these fees are going to have an impact on you, right? So there's a balance there. And I'll just point back to my comment, which is use income from vacant property registration program to rehabilitate vacants, right? All owners of vacant properties in the city of Wilmington are required to register them and pay these increasingly large annual registration fees. And so the city can fine owners who don't register them. Income is supposed to be used for rehabilitation of the vacant properties. And so if 1,053 which Ms. Willauer said, of vacant properties are registered, and the city collects $800,000 a year in vacant property fees, which are contributed to the general fund, these resources should be used to keep vacant properties clean, secure, and watertight, and bring them back into productive use. So I'd encourage you to enforce the existing laws, take a look at how the departments are effectively monitoring the number of vacant buildings in the city of Wilmington, assess the effects of the conditions of these buildings on nearby businesses and the neighborhoods in which they're located, and promote efforts to rehabilitate such vacant buildings.
Okay, well, thank you for your comments. Well, there's one more question. How do you know that the money isn't better used for revitalization?
What do you,
How do you know that the money isn't being used for revitalization? Because you're saying that we're collecting these fees. and
I
we're
said
not
that
doing this.
in fiscal year 2023, L&I budgeted just $130,000 to address the conditions at properties neglected by their owners.
But they're not
So- no,
revitalizing
no, no.
them, they're
So-
addressing the conditions, which
Right.
means the grass, the boarded properties, the problems, the leaks, all the things that happen around that. And when they need more money, they come and ask for more money if it gets to that point.
Yeah, so I'll go back to what my original point is monitor the number of vacant buildings in the city of Wilmington, assess the effects of the conditions in those buildings, and require the owners of those buildings to pay during their registration and payment of related fees to promote the efforts of revitalizing these buildings. That's
Thank
my
you.
that's my point.
Thank you
And-
very much, and they're good
yeah,
suggestions, and
yeah.
not saying that they're bad, and I understand you and others do care and don't see raising fines as a way to do this. However, the current system that we have with the current fines isn't working because they're not doing it. And as far as monitoring, I think we've done a good job considering that the number of vacancies in the city has gone down through the efforts that have been applied with nonprofits such as Woodlawn, Ministry of Caring, Habitat for Humanity, and the Land Bank. And we specifically give money to these agencies, but mostly with the Land Bank, and they are repurposing, and they are fixing these properties, and people are living in them, in your neighborhood. You
Yeah,
can see
and
that they're
so
living in
I
there.
think we can talk about that, and I hope that this committee really looks into how homes are being renovated. 213 Harrison
I was there
Street,
yesterday.
I heard, and there's people who are doing spotty work on homes within these agencies, and so if you're receiving money from the city of Wilmington to fix homes up, at least make sure you're hiring good contractors.
Well,
And that
there will
homes
be
are being
accountability.
fixed, right? Yeah, right.
There will be accountability.
Accountability is what we need. And so accountability, stronger code enforcement. And just lastly, before I leave, I encourage Councilmember Darby, I don't know if she's here or not, to, support that, to bring that back, the rent stabilization. I think, you mentioned affordable housing being an issue. You can talk to any renter right now in the city of Wilmington who's dealing with the increased cost of rent.
Okay.
Someone
Well,
on
we'll have you
Lancaster
talk to
Avenue.
Councilmember
Yeah.
Darby to see, I don't know what happened, why it was pulled,
Yeah.
but we'll see what happens. But right now, thank you for coming and commenting
She's always available by email.
by email. She schedules accordingly by email. At this point, are there any other council members that have any comments, any feedback?
Yes, Madam Chair, it's, first of all, we should be cognizant of the fact that the narrative on this is not such that this policy, and I got to speak in generalities, is trying to pick the pockets of people, of indigent people. It is a across-the-board, one sock fits all type of approach. But either someone or someone's do not choose to keep up to date on issues. But this council voted through a resolution 4 months ago to increase the downtown development district to 32nd Street of Market. That is not the downtown. From 32nd Street, from the bridge over. So when people talk in generalities, I think it's important to correct the record. And push back on things that are not accurate so that that conversation doesn't go on. This council, $1.2 million in renovation costs, 3 lotteries. If that's not stabilizing and keeping people in their houses, I don't know what is.
1.5, Councilmember,
1.5. I don't know what is. All of the organizations that you mentioned, for which I'm not going to be able to vote on this, have received funds from the state federal to do what? 62 homes are being built on Bennett Street. That's unheard of. Another 25 are going to be on North Market. Unheard of. The amount of outreach this administration and this council has put into neighborhoods is beyond anybody else. And so when persons of good intent come to lecture us about matters that they do not fully understand, either intentionally or unintentionally, we need to push back. I have no further comment.
Thank you. And we need to deal with facts, not opinions. Any other council member? I will just say this. I'm very pleased that the G word did not come out today, that we're not gentrifying, because I'm just trying to figure out how we gentrify and displace someone from a vacant property. So I'm happy with that. So at this point, I am going to call for a motion to move forward an ordinance to amend Chapter 4 of the City Code relating to the registration of vacant properties.
So moved.
Can I get a second? Thank you. It's been properly moved and second that the ordinance be voted out of committee. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Do we have the votes online? Anyone who's online, if you can unmute yourself for the vote so we can make sure we have it. Okay,
I'm not on the committee, Madam Chair. It's Councilwoman Bracy.
thank you. Yes, I know, you're not on the committee. Thank you. All right, well, it has been, all in favor, say aye.
We said aye.
Okay, we have 3, and at this point, the motion is carried. This will be on the July 3rd City Council meeting.
You didn't call for voting no. Roll call.
Oh, anybody opposed?
Yes, Madam Chair, I cannot vote on this, I will not be voting on this legislation as.
Were you
the vo-
abstaining or you opposing?
I'm abstaining.
Abstaining, okay, so you're not voting no, but you're abstaining. Okay, duly noted. Thank you, Councilman White, and thank you
Thank
for
you
your
for your
wise words of wisdom. So there's nothing else at this time for this committee. The next city council meeting will be June 20th, next Thursday. We ask that you come, join us, and without any other questions, I now call for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
It has been properly moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. Have a good evening. Enjoy your summer. Stay safe.
Happy Juneteenth.